Mm. Hi, folks. You're with Tassus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a series of black activists who are all like Harvard and Princeton type educated, and they're going around pushing the notion at taxpayer expense, incidentally. They're just race hustlers, but pushing the notion that the only reason black people aren't as wealthy as whites, or indeed wealthier, is because of what evil whitey's done. And they're saying that today, this very minute, blacks are being held back by horrible levels of racism that's systemic, it's entrenched, it's this, it's that, it's the next thing. Now, I'm looking at one now. I've just had a look at a video. Now, it went for probably 15 minutes. I didn't watch the whole thing. I only got about 10 minutes in, and it was just too difficult to take. But the claims made are ideological, a series of ideological assertions rather than any facts. And the interviewer gave some pretty softball questions, I thought, but even these were enough to stump and irritate and annoy the black feminist activist who threatened to walk out unless the interviewer stopped asking questions. So that's so it was. She wasn't there to discuss or to explain. She was there to impose. And if you won't accept what she's imposing, then that's it. You're a Nazi, fascist, Hitler, and she's going to walk out. So let's just have a look at the. Now she correctly cites that there's differences between black and white. Now she switches around between. She doesn't use, for example, how rich Obama is. That he has a $20 million waterfront mansion in Massachusetts. That's not mentioned, or that sports stars like Shaquille O'Neal or black movie star Denzel Washington, or that she doesn't cover any of that, but she does use isolated examples of rich white people. So she'll say, well, the president of the United States is a straight white male. There you go. That's proof that black people are oppressed. It proves that racism is everywhere. All right, then, well, what about Obama and his 20? No, that's just an isolated. No. That thing, we can't talk about that. So she ping pongs around and says that an isolated instance of, so is every white man the president of the United States? Well, of course not. Is every black man living in a waterfront mansion like Obama? Well, no, of course not. So those are isolated, and you'll find those in any group. There are a number of very, very wealthy black people in the United States. The basketball stars, football, sporting stars, entertainers. Beyonce's rich, for example, Jennifer Lopez and so on. There's plenty of non-white entertainers that are doing very well. So, but she goes to sort of the if you like the average to the upper end of the average mid-range income. Says, well, blacks aren't as rich as that, but then ignores all the many poor white people and says, well, no, we don't want equality with poor white people. We want equal outcomes with wealthy white people. So straight away, she shoots her own argument to pieces there. And I'm surprised there's not the interviewers. And I don't think she'd want to attend an interview where she was going to get questions, because she's pushing an ideological position, as indeed others are. And they're paid by the globalists to spread this social disharmony. And that's their job. Their job is to spread social disharmony and to try and guilt and shame white people. So, well, the reason this, it's all your fault. You did it. Now, again, she got some softball questions, but said, well, what laws today? What is it that's holding back black people back today? Now, she sort of fudges and ums and ahs, then goes to slavery. Slavery is, well, wait a minute, no, today, what's that? Because of slavery. That hangover from slavery exists today, and it's sort of miasma that goes on forever. And so really we have to go back to slavery. Now, if you look at sort of slavery in terms of unless it was through smuggling operations. Really, there haven't been any slaves coming to the United States, as in from Africa. There haven't been any slaves coming to the United States for 215 years, give or take. So it's been a long time now. In terms of the legal position of slaves, then the end of the Civil War was the end of slavery. Some of those slaves were they were, if you like, legally transformed into being like the indentured white people were, sort of that, to apprentices, or they were assistant blacksmiths and so on. So there was like a changeover period from slavery to indentured, as white people were indentured, and then becoming free citizens. So now she goes through the history. She cited examples, extreme examples, say in a particular town of a particular state where such and such happened, or so and so happened, but it only happened for 1 or 2 years, for example, and even that was 150, 160 years ago. So the slightest example anywhere of, there was a black person shot here, that's it. So therefore everything is right. So it works both ways here, or she wants to have it both ways, rather, that if one bad thing happened to a black person anywhere in America, then all of black people were affected by that. But if there was one instance where it didn't happen, then that's just a one-off. It's irrelevant. It's a one-off thing. We don't need to count that. So it's very disingenuous, the sort of methodology that she uses. Now she comes back to think, well, the outcomes are different. Therefore, there must be something evil and racist going on. If we can find the tiniest sliver of something out anywhere, whether it's a one-off or not, then that's it. That we've nailed it. That's the cause. That's the reason. Now, she won't accept that all the black behavior is different, and that even to suggest or imply that in itself is evil, whitey racism. And I've had this direct conversation with black people previously, black employees. There's a black employees who goof off and do dumb things. I say, hey, it makes me feel good to do it, though. Well, why should I not? Why? Just because whitey can deny themselves a feel good time, why should I have to, just because whitey does? So there's this sort of that just because my behavior is different, by even pointing it out, you're being racist to me, and why should I behave like you do? I'm not some Uncle Tom, or this type of thing. So and this activist has this now. While claiming that blacks are victims of racism and this and that and the next thing, she's not accepting that because she's not a bright kid, not a bright woman, that she was gifted a senior high school thing was waved through, that she was gifted a position in Harvard, for goodness sakes, which she wouldn't have had a snowball's chance of getting into. And then on top of that was gifted a degree, and then gifted a PhD. Everything has been gifted to her. And yet she says black people are being held back, when the reverse is being the case. If a low IQ moron like you is being gifted a PhD, then blacks are not being held back, not in any way. So she can't present a coherent or cogent argument, and keeps jumping back to events that occurred years ago, or 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago. Now she also neatly skirts around the issue. Well, why are black countries so poor in Africa? Why did they not use the wheel? And so that's ignored. And again, the mere fact that's mentioned means that you're a racist for you're making me feel uncomfortable with your questions. Therefore, you're a racist. So these are all sort of how she conducts herself. But she comes in as a fully indoctrinated fanatic, not as someone who has any understanding or cognizance of the issues. And so it makes the discussion sort of almost pointless, really, because she's not going to shift her position 1 inch, no matter what facts are presented to her. Yet assumes any question you ask her means that you're an evil racist, and so nothing's going to happen here. But it does illustrate the extent to which she's been brainwashed and indoctrinated rather than educated, and that comes across strongly. Now, also the type of, it's not so much the cherry picking, it's the type of cherry picking and the way key facts are just removed in order to make the cherry picking even more sort of hard hitting, as the doctrinaire fanatics would see it, at least. So he talks about the GI loans that were given to returning servicemen in the after World War II. And these were low interest loans and that sort of thing for a variety of things. It wasn't just to buy houses, which it was. This is the suburban house. But it was also to say the GI Bill, people wanted to, if their education had been disrupted, they wanted to go back to school maybe and study something, to university. And there was that too. But her argument was that blacks were denied this. Now, is you sort of tease it out a bit, and she's got a paper online that you can look at, but she claims that blacks should have been allowed to buy houses in white neighborhoods. At the same time saying that whites are racist and evil and we don't want anything to do with them and they're all Hitler and so on. She then flips the position and says, well, blacks wanted to buy houses in white neighborhoods because they held their value better. So she said, well, white neighborhoods had low crime, they were cleaner and tidier, they were better maintained, better looked after, and And so black people wanted to move into these low crime neighborhoods because it would be a better environment to, say, bring up children. So she's therefore conceding that white neighborhoods are better. And that's why blacks wanted to move to white neighborhoods. Now, some of the covenants in it was supposed to be that some of the banks or lending institutions, whether they be sort of from the federal government or private banks, wouldn't loan money to black people to buy a house in a white neighborhood. And therefore, that's a demonstration of racism. This caused blacks to move into ghettos, and that created all sorts of racial inequality issues. So now we need to unpack that a bit, because this is pretty key, because it's more modern history than, say, going back to the 1700s or whatever. There was a difference. A house in a black neighborhood was much cheaper. So the house in a black neighborhood you could buy for, and I'll just use round numbers here, you could buy for $10,000, but the house in a white neighborhood was $15,000. So again, I'm just rounding off numbers here. Now, because the black guy applying for the loan had a lower income and had more children, more expenses, this sort of thing, then banks would loan money relative to the expenses and overheads the person had, but also their income. Could they service that loan reasonably? Now, if you wanted to move in the white neighborhood and you had to have a certain income to be able to do it, and it wasn't much good if you had like 10 kids or something. So the only loans these black people could get was to buy cheaper houses. Where were those cheaper houses? They were in the black end of town. So that's how that came about. Now, this activist, she paints this of no, this was willful discrimination to stop blacks from getting ahead, stop blacks from going into nice neighborhoods. But again, the nice neighborhoods were the white neighborhoods. If it's systemic racism, all that sort of thing, why were the white neighborhoods so desirable and attractive to black people? It's because they were low crime, they were clean, tidy. You could walk down the street without getting knifed or shot at. These sorts of things. So she tries to have it both ways. But the reality was the blacks weren't being denied loans to buy in white neighborhoods. They were only being given loans they could afford to service because of their lower incomes. Now, you could argue the reason they had lower incomes was the rate. You could sort of go down that path, but she didn't really sort of push that one. She accepts that they, or doesn't seem to dispute that blacks had lower education and had lower incomes. That she doesn't seem to want to, that's not the battleground she wants to play on. Instead, she wants to say, hey, look at this. The government systemically denied loans to black people, but no, they didn't. Black people could have access to those loans if they could service the loans. And this was the material point. Now, the white neighborhoods were, cleaner, tidier, safer, more law-abiding, all these things. Sure, anybody wants to go and live there. And if you look at any black activist or any black person, as soon as their income improves, whether it's the Black Lives Matter activists and race hustlers, doesn't matter. But as soon as their financial circumstances improve, what do? They move straight into white neighbourhoods. Why do they do that? For the same, because they're low crime, clean, tidy neighbourhoods. That's where you want to live. You don't want to live nobody wants to live in a high crime neighbourhood. So they can scream racism and all this stuff, anything they want. Well, if that's the case, then clean up your own neighbourhood, for goodness sakes. And by talking as she does, as indeed does any activist, whether they be Black Lives Matter or not, they seem to be reconciled to the fact that a black neighbourhood will never be safe. You can't make it safe. No matter what you do, it's never going to be safe, clean and tidy and a nice place to live. The only thing you can do is get out of that black neighbourhood and move into a white neighbourhood. And suddenly you're shoulder to shoulder with all these evil, racist, Nazi, fascist, but that's where you want to live. That's your choice, to live there amongst all these Nazis. I mean, for goodness sakes. So again, the Nazis don't exist as being painted here. But you go through any one of the points she raised as to why America is systemically racist and Nazi and fascist and Hitler and and not one of those points stand up to scrutiny. And yet they're peddled relentlessly and brutally and aggressively throughout the entire education establishment and across the media as well. These activists like her not only are being gifted affirmative action PhDs, but they're being generously funded to spread the most horrible lies, horrendous lies, which in turn are radicalizing others to believing that there's systemic racism everywhere you look, when in fact there isn't. And to what extent there ever has been, it has been for a long time. If these people that claim that it's all right, if the behavior of the black people changes, then their circumstances will change. And this is something that needs to be brought back into the daylight. You've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.